there, welcome. Today I'm going to talk about War and Peace, the epic Russian version of the novel, the classic novel. Now, this was directed by Sergei Bondarchuk. I'm trying to make sure I get all the names right. Who also directed it, and he plays Pierre Bekulov. There's also two other central characters in there called Natasha Rostova and Andrei Volkanovsky. So, I've probably butchered the names, I know I have, but I'm just trying to kind of get this right. Just get the general thing out first. It's that's the things, I remember the actors and what they did rather than the actual fully pronounced Russian names. I've not read War and Peace. I have not read it, but watching the film makes me want to read it. This is a 7-hour epic. It's available through Criterion. It can be bought through streaming, or you can buy the disc. And I bought the disc from America ages ago, and then I proceeded to not watch it. Even though I'd seen Waterloo and liked it, was the director's other big film. This one, it was like 7 hours, and it's one of those films that 7 hours doesn't feel like 7 hours. It feels pretty quick paced, even though it's paced like a Russian film, which is different from an American film or a British film. Even your own cultural things, it's got its own way of telling a story. But once you get into the rhythm of it, it doesn't really matter. The big thing is, the first section is the longest. After that, it's much short sections. So it's best to treat it as 4 films. And first film's a long film, and the other 3 parts are much shorter. That's probably the best way to do it. That's how I watched it to start with. And then, by the time I got to the final sections, I just kind of pushed through. Because it was, as with any story, the more you see it, the more you're interested in what happens. So, it's not a perfect film. Saoirse Ronan did a video on it about a year ago, and he absolutely adored it. I'm not going to praise it as highly as he did. So just in case you want a recap of Saoirse Ronan, go watch his video of how much he loved it. I liked it a lot, but I didn't love it. I thought there was some flaws in it. Sometimes it's too pretty for its own good. Some of the shots were wonderful, but sometimes I thought they kind of got in the way of the atmosphere a little bit. There was some precision here with showing off a direction that made for gorgeous shots, and sometimes they really worked. A lot of the scenes of the showing the culture of the Russian aristocracy before it was going to get hit by Napoleon's war machine. That was really terrifically done. Other times it felt it was a bit too, pretty for its own good. But I like pretty in films, so it's not the worst thing in the world. You got some absolutely gorgeous shots. Another thing I thought was a bit off, before we go into the praising of it, is I think some of the time jumps early on could have been a bit clearer. Really. What year is this? What's going on in the world? Sometimes it moved from the point of view of the characters, and sometimes you kind of didn't pull back and give you enough information that you might need. So there's things like that I thought were a bit flawed. But generally it's a wonderful thing, because it is trying to show respect to the novel by showing its story and its philosophy. Because you have 3 different characters, and the idea is you're taking 3 characters and their view of life, which are all very different, but very Russian, and very much in the period, and testing it through life, and testing it through how their points of view change, and how they deal with things, and how they deal with the problems of life within the situation. And the situation is Napoleonic Wars. It starts off during the early parts of Napoleonic Wars for Russians, where they're going to have a skirmish with Napoleon, but it's going to be so far away that it's not affecting the rich people. The rich people can still go on with their lives. It affects the poor, who are forced to go to the war, and fight, because they don't have money, so they have to make a living by going to fight the war for the rich, which shows you what the social system was like then, and it's kind of the kind of tenets of this is the thing that's going to change over time. This is what's going to help lead to the Russian Revolution over time. But at this point, people are just accepting of that's the way life is. It hasn't got to the stage of the Russian Revolution yet. It's it's a century away, but it's like the seeds are there for what's going to happen. And the first section, the only one character goes to war in the story, and that's Andre. Now, Natasha in this section is pretty much a little girl. She's just a teenage girl or younger, who's just in love with the world, is sweet, is innocent, and is very excitable. So she's just not really that important to the story here. It's Pierre and Andre that are the important things. Pierre is the philosophy guy, the guy who is trying to work out where he fits in life. He's a bastard son of a important count who's got lots of money. And as the first section progresses, he goes from someone who is a bit of a wastrel, going around having parties, not really committing to life, not wanting to fight in a war because he doesn't believe in it, and not really. He finds more, even though he socially has to deal with lots of soldiers and lots of people, he's used as a bit of a coward because he doesn't go and fight because he's not part of that social thing. But he doesn't believe in it. He just doesn't. He doesn't see the need for it. It's not. He sees the kind of hypocrisy of a lot of the war machine and a lot of the social ills of the time. The way young people can see through that, but they don't know how to actually impact and or deal with it in any impactful way, rather than just being snide about it and saying, "I'm above this." Now, Andre is his pal, who is much more of he's a soldier, and he's going to go and fight the war, and he's already suffering from his first marriage, and he's not connecting with his wife, and he sees life as something's very compromised and is not very enjoyable. He seems to enjoy being with his soldiers and having the logic of the structure of the army to keep his life in order, even though his personal life is a bit of a mess. He can't really deal with his wife. He didn't seem to like her very much, and he comes from aristocracy line. Even though he's never going to be getting near that, he's still viewed with respect. He's of that line, and it's that thing of both of these characters have the luxury through having money to indulge their philosophical problems. Now, Andre's wife gets pregnant and has to go to war through a disastrous campaign against Napoleon, which basically makes him hate even his one thing that he kind of had respect for, which was the military process and the chain of command, where he sees the chain of command is actually incompetent. Now, the transition of what happened in this thing where they're obviously getting their asses kicked to Napoleon backing away is a bit vague in the novel, and on the novel and in the film. So it's not very satisfying. It's like you feel a bit confused what happened there. Like obviously they got a negotiation and something, there was a peace was created, but it's not clear how what went down. But following that, he comes back to find his wife dying, and there is a child which he does not know how to deal with. And he sees all of life as being essentially, something that's not particularly enjoyable. So his philosophy has degraded. Well, Pierre has got the money from his dying father, is now very rich. He becomes married and he ends up in a marriage with a woman who's having affairs behind his back, and he also is not fitting in with what was expected of him. It's just that both of them are just these young guys we're young guys who are getting older and are finding they can't fit into society. And it's a bit what the society is around them and what the place of it is and how they feel they're feeling within that society. The story then goes on to the society around them I see Natasha come into the society as peace returns, and the next story is about her entering the adult world with a lot of enthusiasm and not much guile. Her experiencing the different sides of her society, and Andre falls in love with her, but she's too young and fickle to actually understand the depths of what it is, because she's ignited something in him that he thought was dead, basically, which is some passion. She doesn't understand it because she's young, so he's putting so much pressure on someone who's not ready for that, and he's actually got basically with someone who's too young and idealistic in her own way and self-indulgent versus someone who's got his own self-indulgence based on age, and neither of them are realistic, so it's not going to go well. So he gives her a year to go and live her life, because he says you can't marry me now because you need to live a little bit more. But he only says a year. A year's not much time. Even during that year, she managed to completely screw it all up and throw him away, which makes him despondent and depressed, and makes her realise the damage she can cause by just falling of emotions without any moral centre to them. So she feels really guilty about what she's done to this guy. She tries to get forgiveness from him. Then the war comes, and that's the second half of the film, is basically the war, where Andre is pulled back into the military, even though he finds it a lot of it repulsive. He's now had a dead wife and a fiancée who's dumped him, and he's going to have to fight against Napoleon. Napoleon's coming in, and it's going to be a doomed campaign. He's dealing with military people who have ideas that are not great, and Pierre has become much more interested in the world. He's become less frightened of the world. There's some morality. The kindness he has comes through how he deals with Natasha after her mistakes, shows that he's someone who can see beyond, mistakes. He can understand humanity. He's actually learned from his mistakes to see humanity. And you see the Napoleonic Wars and some great battle scenes and some wonderful stuff. But it's really about how they process each part of their life. So basically, Andre has to do the fighting of the war, but Pierre gets caught within the war as well. He goes to see what's actually going on, and he ends up helping out and seeing the absolute horror, and then seeing Napoleon coming into his city and absolutely destroying it. And he decides, instead of running away, he's going to wait and he's going to assassinate Napoleon, which obviously doesn't work, but that's his plan. And of course, Napoleon doesn't think enough about the Russian winter, because the Russians know about the winter and know how to survive it, and the French troops don't. So they steal so much of the gold from Russia, and they commit so many atrocities. But then when the winter comes, they have to try and back away. Horrors are faced on them, and Napoleon abandons his own people to escape and survive. And it's just like a wonderful sequence of the absolute disaster of war. It's not like, but yeah, there's hubris involved with Napoleon, but it's also the disaster of war and human touch of war, and how so many people are absolutely destroyed by war. And the whole point of the section is about the absolute horrors of war. Now, the first section, you saw the horrors of war and the comments of the Russian army, but that does not hit the people because of distance from it. They don't quite get how brutal these wars are and what's actually war is, not the kind of conceptual side. They can still think of the conceptual side of things and how they live their lives, and they're very self-indulgent. Then when war finally comes, people actually have to have a reckoning of what they actually are and what they believe. Some people, like Pierre and Natasha, grow up, even when Pierre doesn't assassinate Napoleon and doesn't get anyone close, actually suffering through all of these problems, suffering and being in the front line with people almost dying, brings him even closer to humanity, so that he's no longer the distant youth who looked down on humanity. He's someone who can understand humanity and all its problems. While Andre recovers his humanity as well through the war, and even though it's too late for him, he's been injured, he's going to die, he forgives Natasha. He actually can understand what his life means. Natasha finally can move through her youth to actually understand like how to deal with human beings and not be self-absorbed and to be a kind person. So eventually her and Pierre get together. Pierre's always the soft spot for her. Now that sounds soapy, but it's done wonderfully. It's also, you've got so much philosophy throughout it. It's like, it's not just, oh, this is a token bit of philosophy. It's like, there are massive sections taken from the book where the characters are wrestling with things through different parts of their lives. Like Pierre's stuff early on is not treated like a joke. It's like, this is the philosophy of a person in that era, and him trying to make sense of his life. Andre, when he goes through all the problems of not connecting with his wife, the failures with Natasha, all that really affects him, and it comes through the voiceover and it comes through the screen of the actual pain of this man and how he can't step back and how human beings' lives are actually lived without with some comprehension but not total comprehension, and the kind of difficulties of that, and how it takes a long time, a lot of pain to try and get through lots of instinctual things that you push forward because that's what it feels right to you, and how life can change your point of view. So it's a complicated story and it's a complicated situation. So the story itself, is wonderful, because the problem is a lot of books took from War and Peace the idea of family and peace then going to war and how it affects them, but it don't have the philosophy of all, so it becomes a soap opera, and it's just like the simplistic emotions thrown at the screen. This one is no, it's actually, this is complications. The complications are the point, not the melodrama that comes out of them, the melodrama of life that comes out of the complications. The complications are the point, not the melodrama. The melodrama is just the follow through of the thoughts and feelings and ideas, the very flawed ideas that people have about life and how they have to work through that and make mistakes. So the film is about complications and mistakes and self-worth and how to get over things when you realise you were the wrong person. Because all three characters have points where they realise they've done the wrong, and they had points of view that were self-indulgent and could be viewed as real problems for other people, and they have to get through it, and that's what the film's about, them getting through it, but in a very humanistic way. And when Napoleon arrives, he's more of an unseen figure, but his forces are all over the place. The disaster he causes is all over the place, and he's such a more difficult and scary figure in this film than the Napoleon film could ever make him, because the Napoleon film made him a joke. Well, in reality, he was destroying half of Europe for his own reasons, and some of them you didn't get in that film, like some of the things he wanted to do to actually improve the law, improve education, things you didn't get in that film. So I mean, it was a complicated situation. He was both a dictator, but he also had some social ideas, and it was a very complicated figure. You couldn't simplify. In this film, he seems from the Russian point of view, so he's just this figure of fear. But he is relentless and terrifying, and it's like, even as a person, he may not seem that oppressive. The actions he does are so oppressive that it's very intimidating as a figure, and it really brings to mind how horrifying Napoleon Wars were for a lot of people. And it's just a wonderful film. Despite its flaws, it is a wonderful film. I don't want to go on and on about this because I think it's a film you have to see. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what it's about and why it's really interesting. But you really should watch it because it is just beautiful. So that's me for now on War and Peace. I did not go for the 3 video thing. I don't really go and watch Saoirse Ronan video on it because he covers it in a lot more detail than I do. Because he'd done that, so I didn't really feel I needed to do like 2 or 3 videos on it. I just thought this is my take on War and Peace. So I hope you enjoy this, and I'll be back soon with some more. Right, bye for now.